In wingsuit flying, the line between mastery and disaster is only a few feet wide. One wrong airflow, one shift in terrain, and a stable glide becomes a fatal path. Most experienced flyers complete their runs without incident. One pilot, however, would begin a standard glide that quickly turned into an unrecoverable descent. In the morning of September 17, 2022, in the eastern Rocky Mountains, the morning began cold and clear. Frost coated the shaded rock surfaces, and the air at 13,000 feet hovered a little above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It was quiet, still, and bright, the kind of morning wingsuit pilots usually hope for. This was where 32-year-old Sarah Martinez stood preparing for what she believed would be a routine flight. Sarah lived in Colorado, and almost everything in her life revolved around the outdoors. She worked as an outdoor camera operator for small production teams, the kind of job that required long hours in rough places, cliff edges, snowfields, canyons, and ridgelines. She filmed climbers during multi-day expeditions, recorded skydivers testing out new gear, and captured footage for training videos used by backcountry groups. She liked the work because it blended her two favorite things: being outside and documenting moments most people never get to see. Outside of work, she had her own goals. She wanted to build a small production company that focused on filming remote adventure sports, especially technical climbing and flight footage. She talked about eventually traveling to South America to film flights over desert cliffs and volcanic ridges. Some of her friends said she dreamed bigger than she admitted. If things had gone as she planned, she would have slowly moved from being a camera operator to a full-time director for outdoor projects. Her path into wingsuit flying came naturally. She started with skydiving in her early 20s, first as a hobby and then as a passion. What she liked most wasn't the thrill people talked about, it was the control. She liked learning how to use her body like a tool, adjusting position by inches, staying calm even when free-falling at high speed. By the time she transitioned into wingsuit flying, she already had hundreds of safe skydives behind her. She approached every new step the same way she approached life, slowly, patiently, and with a notebook full of details. By the morning of her final flight, Sarah had logged more than 600 skydives and nearly 200 wingsuit runs. Her friends always described her the same way: steady, organized, and serious about preparation. She preferred technical lines with clean exits and predictable air, not risky stunts or showy maneuvers. She wasn't chasing viral videos or trying to impress anyone. She simply wanted to get better at the discipline she loved, one jump at a time. That September morning in the Rockies felt like any other step toward her long-term goals. She had a new camera setup she planned to test mid-flight, a clean route mapped out through the main valley, and a trusted partner jumping behind her. Everything pointed to a normal, controlled day in the air. She had no reason to believe it would be her last. Before the jump, Sarah and her partner spent several minutes going over the route again. They laid out their printed maps on a flat rock and traced the path with their gloves, making sure they both understood every turn. The first part of the flight was supposed to be the easiest, an open stretch of air running through the main valley where the wind usually stayed steady. The second part required more precision. They would have to make a slow, controlled curve around a large granite ridge that jutted out over the valley. If they misjudged the angle by even a little, they could drift too close to the rock face. The final part of the run involved lining up for a long glide toward a clearing near 6,000 feet, where they would deploy their parachutes and land in open space. Everything on paper looked solid. The weather forecast showed light winds between 5 and 10 miles per hour, clear visibility, and no major changes expected until late afternoon. For wingsuit flyers, those numbers were considered ideal. Still, the two of them reviewed the ranger station's weekly notes. The notes mentioned small bursts of turbulence inside certain side canyons, nothing extreme, just the kind of shifting air that can happen when morning sun warms the rock faster in some areas than others. It wasn't enough to cancel the flight, but it was something an experienced flyer keeps in mind. After gearing up, they walked to the cliff edge to test the conditions for themselves. Sarah crouched lower, watching how dust and grass moved near the drop-off. Her partner tossed a small piece of dry grass into the air to see how it drifted. Everything pointed downward in a smooth line. The airflow felt calm against their suits, and the valley seemed clear and predictable. But as the sun continued to rise, the landscape below them began to change in ways they couldn't see from the top. Sunlight hit some canyon walls sooner than others, warming the rock unevenly. Warmer air in one spot and colder air in another can create small horizontal pushes, crosswinds, that don't show up in general weather readings and can form suddenly. These pockets of shifting air were invisible from the launch point, and neither of them had any reason to suspect the flight would unfold differently than planned. After one last equipment check, Sarah stepped toward the edge, counted down with her partner, and launched at 9:42 a.m. The moment she dropped from the cliff, her wingsuit filled with air exactly the way it should. The suit stretched tight, the fabric locked into place, and her glide became steady within seconds. GPS logs later confirmed that her exit was almost perfect. No wobble, no delayed inflation, nothing hinting at early trouble. She held a smooth line along the left side of the main valley, following the plan they had gone over that morning. Her horizontal speed stayed consistent, and her body position didn't shift much. Behind her, about 80 yards back, her partner kept a close watch. He could see her outlined clearly against the open valley and radioed occasional updates, altitude, heading, and small adjustments they both needed to make to stay aligned with the intended route. To him, everything looked routine. The first major landmark, a tall granite pillar that stood like a vertical spike in the valley, came into view a few minutes later. Sarah passed it cleanly, keeping enough space between herself and the rock face to avoid turbulence. But once she crossed that point, the valley began to change shape. It narrowed slightly, the floor angled upward, and the side walls shifted closer together. These changes created different airflow pockets, especially as the morning sun started warming the canyon surfaces unevenly. This is where the wind shifted. Helmet footage later showed the moment it happened. A sudden crosswind struck from her left side. It wasn't a gentle push. It was a sharp blast created by warm air rising off one canyon wall and colder air dropping from a shaded section above. When those two air masses met, they formed a sideways gust strong enough to shove a wingsuit flyer off course in less than a second. Sarah's body jolted several feet to the right. Her partner saw it instantly. One moment she was centered in the main corridor. The next, she was sliding toward the canyon wall. He later said it looked like she had been bumped by invisible force, a movement far too fast to be a simple steering error. She reacted quickly, turning her shoulders and tightening the wings of her suit to recenter herself, and she barely cleared the nearest rock formation. But the correction happened at the worst possible moment. The push angled her into a side canyon, one they had intentionally avoided because it rose sharply and offered almost no margin for parachute deployment. From her partner's view, she disappeared as soon as she crossed the boundary into that side corridor. He said it felt like watching someone turn a corner too sharply in a hallway and never reappear. He called her name twice over the radio. She answered once, short, focused, and strained. Inside the alternate canyon, based on her footage, the terrain changed quickly. Instead of dropping away beneath her like the main valley, the canyon floor rose toward her. Her altimeter tones still beeped at normal intervals, but the ground was getting closer faster than expected. The walls on both sides narrowed, leaving little room to steer or adjust her path. Then came the second shift. A downdraft formed near the upper ridge of the canyon, cool air sliding downward like a heavy curtain. This kind of air movement doesn't give a flyer time to plan. It simply hits, and the wingsuit loses lift immediately. Her suit compressed slightly as the airflow pinned her downward. Her descent rate increased, and her margin for escape shrank to seconds. With the canyon tightening and no flat areas for a controlled landing, she deployed her parachute around 3,000 feet. Under normal conditions, this altitude is enough for the canopy to inflate, level out, and give the flyer space to maneuver. But the confined rock walls forced the parachute to open unevenly. Lines twisted, the canopy jerked to the right. The wind inside the canyon was too unstable for it to fully recover. She swung hard toward the right wall. Her partner heard her final transmission, a short sentence cut off mid-word. He waited for her parachute to appear in the main valley, but nothing came through the clearing. Her GPS tracker sent one last altitude reading, then stopped transmitting altogether. Her helmet footage captured only a few more frames, the canyon wall rushing upward, the image tilting sharply, and then the video ending in a single blurred motion. At 10:23 a.m., two hikers moving through the lower canyon heard a single sharp echo roll through the ridge above them. It didn't sound like a rock slide or regular wind shift. It was shorter, heavier, and seemed to hit the canyon walls before fading out. They stopped, listened again, and when nothing followed, one of them pulled out a satellite device. The two gave the nearest known coordinates and reported that the sound could have come from higher up the west fork of the canyon. Because normal cell service didn't reach that area, this call was the only way authorities even knew something had happened. The county search and rescue team was dispatched within minutes. A helicopter crew tried lifting off first, but as soon as the pilot checked the canyon approach, he reported unstable airflow. Gusts coming off the walls, unpredictable pockets of wind, and a narrow entry line. Even a small airshift inside the canyon could flip a helicopter tail first into the rock. With no safe way to enter from above, ground teams were ordered in on foot. The rescue crew began their climb from the base of the canyon. The lower section was manageable, but the farther they went, the steeper and looser the terrain became. They moved across unstable scree, stepped over angled slabs of rock, and used ropes to cross areas where one slip would send someone sliding 20 or 30 feet. It took more than an hour to climb into the branching corridor where Sarah's GPS signal had last transmitted. As they moved deeper, debris from her descent became more noticeable. Torn fabric, a broken riser strap, and small pieces of gear scattered on the rocks. These were signs they were close. At around 1 p.m., the first team reached a boulder field along the West Canyon wall. Her partner, who had guided them via radio from a higher viewpoint, confirmed it matched the area where he had last seen her silhouette disappear. They found Sarah near the upper edge of the boulder field. Her parachute was fully deployed but tangled across several rocks, the canopy twisted from an uneven inflation. Her wingsuit was heavily damaged on the front and right side, consistent with a high-speed impact. There were no signs of equipment malfunction prior to the crash, no tears that suggested a mid-air failure, no broken seams that would point to fabrication issues. The scene showed one thing clearly. She made contact with the ground at full speed. A medical specialist on the team performed standard checks, but confirmed she had died on impact. Given the terrain and the afternoon winds, extraction by helicopter was still unsafe. The rescue crew secured the area, documented the scene for investigators, and stayed on site, waiting for wind conditions to settle. It took several more hours before a helicopter could safely hover above a wider clearing farther down the canyon and lift her out. In the days that followed, investigators reviewed everything. Helmet footage recovered from her camera, GPS logs showing her flight path, weather readings from nearby stations, and wind reports taken before and after the incident. Authorities concluded that 3 factors combined to cause the crash: the sudden crosswind that pushed her off the main route, the rising terrain inside the side canyon that left little space for recovery, and the downdraft that forced her to deploy a parachute in a corridor too tight for stabilization. Their final report listed the cause of death as blunt force trauma from a high-speed impact with the canyon floor. Sarah's final moments became a reminder of how fast conditions in mountain air can turn, and how even skilled wingsuit pilots can be put in a situation with no way out. After the incident, authorities shut down the launch site for several weeks so experts could study the terrain and the air patterns that moved through the valley. Specialists in mountain meteorology, local rangers, and wingsuit instructors reviewed wind readings, compared them with Sarah's GPS logs, and ran small test flights using drones. Their goal wasn't to blame her, it was to understand exactly what kind of airflow could push an experienced pilot off a planned line so suddenly. What they found confirmed a long-standing concern among seasoned flyers. In mountain terrain, wind doesn't always move in smooth lines the way forecasts suggest. It bounces off walls, curls around ridges, drops into canyons, and rises in pockets of warm air. One gust can be gentle in one part of the corridor and violent just a few feet away. In Sarah's case, the crosswind struck at the exact point where 2 air masses collided, creating a sideways push strong enough to pull her off the main route. The narrow canyon she entered left no room for recovery. Within the wingsuit community, Sarah's case quickly became a reference point. Instructors pulled her flight data, her altimeter tones, and the helmet footage into training sessions for new flyers. They used her experience to show how fast a routine glide could turn dangerous, even when a pilot is doing everything right. Her story was brought up in safety briefings to emphasize that the hazards of proximity flying don't always come from dramatic mistakes or reckless behavior. Sometimes, the danger comes from things pilots can't see, air currents hidden inside the terrain. Sarah's accident also changed how many wingsuit schools taught their advanced courses. Before her crash, narrow corridors were seen as difficult but achievable lines, routes that demanded precision but could be flown safely if a pilot practiced enough. Instructors often focused on the visible risks: sharp rock walls, sudden turns, and steep terrain. These were things a flyer could see and plan for. After Sarah's incident, the tone shifted. Schools began pointing out that the real dangers in tight mountain corridors aren't always physical obstacles. They're the invisible forces moving through the air. Coaches started spending more time explaining how crosswinds can slip between ridges without showing up on standard forecasts, how downdrafts can appear when cool air spills over a saddle in the ridge, and how upward-sloping canyon floors silently eat away at a flyer's altitude. Even a slight rise in terrain can shrink the margin for error from seconds to nothing. Students were encouraged to study the terrain the same way climbers study avalanche paths, slowly, carefully, and with respect. They were taught to picture how wind might bend around a corner, how morning sunlight can warm one side of a canyon faster than the other, and how warm air rising from the valley can collide with cold air descending from a ridge. These small shifts create invisible turbulence that no camera or GPS can see. Some schools even added new rules: avoid narrow canyons during early morning temperature changes, reject any route with an upward slope unless conditions are completely stable, and never trust a corridor simply because another pilot made it through the week before. Instructors stressed that mountain air behaves like moving water, always shifting, always unpredictable, never the same twice. In the months after Sarah's crash, pilots across the community began referencing her final flight in discussions and debriefs. People who had watched her footage or studied her GPS data pointed out how clean her launch was, how steady her glide appeared, and how quickly it all changed. Her case became a reminder that wingsuit flying isn't just about being skilled or careful. It's about understanding that conditions can break down faster than human reaction time. Her story made one thing clear: even when a pilot does everything right, the mountain and the air above it don't always cooperate. And in a sport where the margin for correction is only a few feet, a single unexpected gust can turn a perfect flight into something no one can recover from. Her final flight made one point very clear to the entire community: mastery means understanding the limits of human control. And in mountain winds, even the best pilots don't get unlimited chances. If you want more Fatal Files like this one, please subscribe.